Hello and welcome back once again to After the Credits. Today we're talking about Power Rangers, the movie. No, not the one from the 90s. We're talking about the newest one that just came out this year in 2017. So, what did I think of the movie? Part of me likes it, part of me doesn't. And unfortunately, I can't really explain why without spoiling a bit of it, so be warned, this might contain spoilers. I'll do my best to try and avoid them, but there are certain things I kind of have to mention to express what it is I liked and didn't like and why I didn't like them. But I'm going to do my best to keep it spoiler free, but if I reveal something crucial, sorry. So we start out with narration with Zordon, Bryan Cranston, from Breaking Bad, in case you guys didn't know, explaining the history of who he is and how he ended up being the big floating head and all that. And basically it comes down to he was the original Red Ranger. And he was leading a team of Rangers to seek out and defend the pieces of the Zeo Crystal. Yeah, we're jumping all the way ahead to Zeo Crystal already. So the second Power Rangers movie that they're probably going to make will probably turn into Power Rangers Zeo. Basically, what it comes down to is the Zeo pieces of the Zeo crystal embed themselves into a planet and become the life force of the planet. And if the pieces of the Zeo crystal are ever pulled out of the planet dies. And just so happens Earth has a piece of this Zeo crystal. Zordon and his Ranger team are assigned, or are created, or he creates them or whatever, to defend these planets against whatever's trying to take the Zeo crystals, which turns out to be one of the Rangers themselves. Spoiler, by the way, Rita. I kind of predicted this, and a lot of other people did, from the original design of Rita Repulsa's character in this one. Her costume in the promo photos has been heavily green and gold, and she has a gem in her staff that looks similar to what they've shown of the Power coins in the Power Rangers trailer. So it's been speculated, not only by myself, but by others, that Rita is using the Green Ranger power. Like she took the sixth power coin and is harnessing its power in some way, but not fully implementing it because she never fully forms into Ranger form. And it turns out that's accurate, and the way she got the sixth Ranger's power coin is she was the original sixth Ranger. She was the original Green Ranger. This has also led to some speculation that when they introduce the sixth Ranger in the next film, it's going to be a female playing the role. I will spoil this now. There is an after the credits sequence that leads up to the sixth Ranger, and again, just like all the other characters in the movie, they're using the names of the original Power Rangers from the original series. So we do know that the sixth Ranger's name will be Tommy Oliver. However, whether or not Tommy in this case is a boy's name or a girl's name is not made clear because they don't show the actor on screen. So it's possible it could still be a female, but then you have to figure out how Tommy is a girl's name. It could be shortened for something like, I don't know girls' names that well to really think of anything that Tommy could be short for. I have heard of girls named Tony or Tori or, stuff like that that's similar to Tommy, but never actually one that's called Tommy. Unless it's like a nickname where, oh, she's a tomboy, so we call her Tommy. Hopefully it's nothing stupid like that because it is a teacher that reveals the name, so hopefully the teachers would call you by your real name as opposed to a nickname until after they know you and you establish that you'd like to be known by the nickname as opposed to your full name. So good chance that Tommy Oliver is going to be a boy in the next one, but there could still be the twist that it's somehow a female name. And then we'll have a bunch of women naming their daughters Tommy for the next 10 years or whatever. But anyway, digressing back to the story, Rita is using the Green Ranger's power, and she is using it to try to take the Zeo Crystals because she knows that they're more powerful and she can basically kind of be a god or conquer the galaxy by using the power. So she creates this planet-destroying entity called Goldar. Goldar isn't just a henchman in this one like he was in the series. He's basically this giant mech made out of molten gold. She'll collect gold from all around the earth and it'll form into like this liquid and then it'll form slowly into Goldar. which is basically the whole make my monster grow thing. He just comes out large to begin with. But he's not necessarily a Zord. He has his own consciousness, his own free will, kind of. But he takes orders from Rita. So if Rita says, go step on this building, he goes and steps on the building, even though he still has enough control to fight without her commands. But he's nothing like he was in the original series. He doesn't speak at all. He doesn't even really look like anything other than molten metal. And that's another thing I don't like about this one, is the CGI in this actually looks worse than the one in the original Power Rangers movie. You know, everyone complained about how bad in CGI those Zords looked. At least you could tell what those Zords were. These Zords, by the time we finally see them, is just a mess. I heard somebody make a reference the other day about Scorpion King level of CGI, and that's kind of where the CGI in this movie is at. I mean, you just can't tell what anything is once it goes CGI. Where in the original Power Rangers movie, you could kind of tell that the Zord was supposed to be a frog. This Zord is supposed to be this. This Zord is supposed to be that. You could depict what it was, even though it looked computer generated. Where in this, it just looks messy and unfinished. But I'll get more into that later. I want to get back into the story. So after Zordon's narration, we find out that he used the rest of his energy to trap Rita and in turn destroyed himself and save the world. So then we cut 2 years later, where he's been in hibernation, Alpha's been kind of monitoring everything, and they're kind of just buried underground somewhere. And we now get introduced to Jason. So Jason was a jock, blew out his knee, and in turn decided that now I'm going to become a delinquent. Which is my first major issue with this movie, is it turned all of the Power Rangers into delinquents, where in the original series they were all straight-A students, top of their class. They weren't social outcasts. They were openly friendly to everyone and accepted everyone and was friendly with everyone and made everyone feel better about themselves and tried to be positive role models like a superhero should. Even though they were constantly at odds with Bulk and Skull, they still were friendly to them to a degree and tried to help them out when needed. They were never petty about it. But the overall point was they were never delinquents. The only time anyone was ever delinquent in the original series was the one time Tommy got in trouble for something and had to go to detention. I think he ended up being late for class because he was fighting a monster. And that was like the only time that any of them were ever really delinquent in the original series, other than when they were under a magical spell that made them bad. But in this movie, all the Power Rangers are delinquents. That's actually kind of how they meet, is through detention. Well, not really. So even though Jason's a delinquent, he still kind of helps out people that are getting bullied that are weaker than him, which is where he meets Billy. Billy, being the nerd, is always getting picked on, except in this, he's not so much a nerd as much as he's autistic. Because they actually make a point of saying that he's on the scale or he's below the curve or whatever comment they make about autistic children. He can comprehend things, he's smart, but he doesn't get sarcasm or things like that. You know, he's high-functioning autistic, so he's basically a genius who can understand complicated mathematics and things like that and science-based stuff and can take a real interest in it, but has no concept of, like, putting himself into danger or sarcasm when somebody makes a joke, he doesn't get it. And that wasn't who Billy was. So the fact that they took that character in that direction just kind of irritates me. Sure, they're trying to give a positive role model for autistic children to look up to, I guess. But that's not who Billy was. I mean, they could have done that with any character, introduced another character into the television show that's still running, by the way. Had that be the autistic hero. No, they got to make Billy that. And honestly, like, he didn't even come off as autistic all that much, other than the rare occasion where he didn't get a joke. And the thing was, Billy might not have gotten jokes, but that's because he thought logically and scientifically. So when you made a joke, he would point out what was wrong with the joke as opposed to laughing at it. He would say something like, well, physically that couldn't happen because of this. And it wasn't that he didn't get that you were telling a joke. He understood you were telling a joke. He just didn't find it funny because he understood why something wouldn't work the way you're describing it. And he would take the time to point it out to you. It wasn't that he didn't understand comedy. Billy can often be seen laughing at different jokes in the original series. So to just completely shift the character like that is kind of annoying. And they didn't even stick with it that long. Like I said, his basic I don't understand jokes is basically the only thing that makes him autistic. And like halfway through the movie, they just drop it and just kind of make him this kind of clownish character where honestly, he didn't feel at all like Billy. He actually felt more like the character of Zack. The way Zack originally was in the series, where he was always kind of the prankster and joking around and things, that's who Billy in the movie ended up kind of becoming once they dropped the whole autistic I don't get comedy thing. He was just always kind of goofballing around and was more fitting of the Zack character than the guy that they got to play Zack. And the main reason that they probably didn't cast him as Zack is, again, because the actor is black, and now there's this whole race issue about, oh, the Asian Ranger was yellow and the Black Ranger was black. You know what? Who cares? I always thought that was kind of the point. I never saw it as being racist back then. I saw it as they were identifying people that nationalities could identify with. I mean, I could just easily be offended by the white boy being represented by blue and the white girl being represented by pink, as the blacks can be that the black guy was represented by the color black, the Asian girl is represented by the color yellow, and the indistinguishable origin of Jason, who some people originally thought was supposed to be Native American or Hispanic, was represented by the color of red. And I always thought that was kind of the point. I mean, hell, most of the black people I knew growing up in school that watched Power Rangers liked the Black Ranger because he was black and his color was black, so it represented them. It wasn't really racist until recently, when everyone wants to be politically correct and these social justice warriors point out how a negative stereotype it was. And it's like, back then, it didn't have that negative connotation like it has now. It just was what it was. It wasn't offensive, or at least it wasn't meant to be offensive. It was just the way it turned out. And even the actor who played Zack in the original series said that he never saw anything wrong with it. The girl who played Trini never saw anything wrong with being the Yellow Ranger. It's just the way it played out. So if the actors themselves didn't see anything wrong with it, who are all these uptight white kids online who probably never even saw the original series to make it about a race issue? So again, an actor who would have been better played as Zack gets stuck as Billy because we don't want to make the black guy the Black Ranger again. And at the same time, they get an Asian guy to play Zack in the movie because, well, we can't make him the Yellow Ranger because the Yellow Ranger is supposed to be a girl, first of all, even though in the original Sentai she was a guy. So we can't have the Asian be the Yellow Ranger. And we already got our Jason, so this one's going to be Zack, I guess. And he just doesn't really feel like Zack, honestly. He doesn't feel like Billy. He doesn't feel like he actually belongs in the cast at all. He actually feels more like he would have been better off being the movie version of Skull than he would have being Zack or any of the Rangers. Like at one point, when they were first shown the Zords, the Zack character walks away from the group as they go to do something else, go back to training or whatever. And he jumps in the Zord and takes it for a joyride just to be rebellious and, hey, I'm going to go out and do something cool. And, okay, that's kind of Zack-ish, but at the same time, Zack wouldn't have done that. Yes, Zack was a goofball, but he was more mature than that. I would have saw that being more, again, a Billy role, where Billy would have done it out of curiosity for the technology. It's like, hey, these are interesting. I kind of want to know how they work. I'm going to go take a look at that. Oh, crap, I don't know how to control this. It's moving. And that would have been more of a Billy thing, to where eventually Billy would have got the hang of it because his scientific mind would have taken over. Yeah, there's just a lot of character flaws in the movie. Like Trini, again, they said her damn name wrong. Her name has been Trini from the start, and no one can seem to get her name right in any of the movies. That fan movie that came out a while ago, they called her Tina or Trina or something like that. And they do the same thing in this. A movie produced by Haim Saban, who brought the damn series to America and named the character Trini, it's still said wrong in the movie. How do you get your own damn character's name wrong? Oh, by the way, Trini's gay now. I mean, it's like vaguely hinted at in the movie. I mean, it's like a one throwaway line, but in case you didn't get it, yeah, she's gay, which didn't need to be said. Honestly, I will say this, though. The vagueness of how they handled that was so much better than Beauty and the Beast when they're like hammering you over the head with the fact that the character was gay. This, they did it real subtly. They're all sitting around talking about, you know, like why they ended up in detention. And they're trying to get Trini to talk about her personal life. She's kind of just not wanting to open up because she has family issues. And at one point, I think it was Jason said, boyfriend issues or something like that. And she goes, yeah, boyfriend issues. And he's like, oh, girlfriend issue? You know, and kind of like hints at it. And she doesn't respond to it. But it's kind of, yeah, obviously. And that's handled so much better, and they don't then harp on it for 100 beats of the movie, like, hey, in case you didn't catch it, she's a lesbian? They're just like, oh, okay, that's her character. Whatever. And they move on. They go back to the fucking movie, which I like. So, again, changing the characters and changing their home lives irritates me a little bit, but at the same time, there are certain things they handled very well, like that. One thing I didn't like is Billy's father is dead, which in the original series, his father was very much alive. Zach's mom is like sick and dying. His father's not around. Trini's adopted, which again didn't fit into the original series. Like the most family tragedy that they really had in the original series was when Kimberly's parents got divorced. I think that was very early on in like very first season, like midway through or something, it was established that they were divorced or getting divorced. But that's like the most family tragedy type of thing that happened with any of the Rangers. And now they're like trying to establish like, oh, they're all degenerates and they're all in trouble and in detention and all the teenage angst because of their home lives. And that's just not who the characters were. The characters were more upscale suburban teens than they were degenerate teen angst teens. So trying to make them relate more to modern youth, it was just the wrong step in my opinion. So anyway, back to the story. So they all meet up in detention, because now we're 20 minutes into this and I haven't said anything about the movie yet. And at some point they meet up after school, which was purely by accident. They all just kind of end up in the same place at the same time. And it happened to be when Billy accidentally found the power coins. So since they were all there, they're like, hey, there's 5 of them, there's 5 of us, let's each take one. You know, if they're worth any money, we split it. Well, then the police find out that they're at the quarry where they're not supposed to be, so they're running from the cops, and they get into an accident. Then they black out. When they wake up, they're at home, and they're uninjured. And then as they're like playing around with their power coins, they realize that they have these additional powers, additional strength, you know, things like that. And they kind of get back together like, hey, have you been having weird experiences since the other night? And everyone's like, yeah, whatever. So they're like, okay, well, you know, it feels like our coins are trying to lead us somewhere, so let's go back to the quarry and see what happens. And they eventually find Alpha, who then leads them to Zordon. And Zordon's whole thing is he wants them to get trained and be able to morph, not to fight Rita, who he knows is back and is going to do whatever. It's so that once they morph, they can use their power to free him from being trapped inside the morphing grid where he is, and then he can take back over as being the Red Ranger and go fight Rita on his own without a team. So he's kind of this selfish, arrogant prick who thinks he's the only one who can do this, which, again, was not Zordon's character. It also kind of establishes that Zordon and his group were the first and only other group of Power Rangers, which it's established in the series isn't true. Zordon has been giving out the Power Ranger powers for centuries to different people all over the place, and having him be one of the original Rangers, fine, I don't have a problem with that if he was one of the very first, and that explains how Rita got possession of the Green Ranger coin to begin with. Cool, I don't have a problem with that part of the story being altered. I mean, that's not technically how it was in the original, but if that's how you want it to flow, I have no problem with that part. But saying that his team was the only one and that he was this arrogant and self-centered and that he never established any other teams breaks the entire canon of the original Power Rangers series, where he says, hey, there's been others before you, you're just my most recent team. So eventually it comes down to where they're not learning how to morph because they can't work together. Only one that's been able to morph for like 10 seconds was Billy, and they keep asking him how he did it, and he says, I don't know, because, again, they're making him autistic instead of the scientific one who can probably figure it out. It just kind of happened by accident. But again, that does kind of play to the original Billy character, where he would have been trying to figure it out scientifically instead of saying, oh, obviously there's an emotional connection here. He would have been trying to figure it out scientifically and probably would have been the only one not able to morph. But so since he's the only one who can morph, or was able to morph, he's supposed to be trying to teach them how to do it, and he doesn't know himself, and it's just kind of driving a bigger and bigger wedge between the team. And then they're kind of like, well, you know what, maybe we should just stop listening to Zordon because obviously he's kind of out for himself, and we should just do our own thing, and if it happens, it happens. And that kind of ends up being what eventually works, but it's at the cost of, I'm not going to give away who, but it's at the cost of one of the main characters. So once there's the sacrifice of the main character, then Zordon kind of realizes that I can't lead this team. My team was my team. This team is clearly Jason's team. And rather than me coming back and trying to take it over, I should trust them to be able to do what I've entrusted them to do, which is take out Rita. And I should be helping them more than I should be trying to manipulate them. So he uses what power he has left to restore the life of the fallen ally. And it kind of revitalizes the team to where they're like, okay, you know, now we understand this emotional connection we all have, and now we're able to morph. So they morph, they go into action, they fight Rita, they fight Goldar, And of course it's Power Rangers, so of course they win. And Rita's vanquished for now. They're still hoping for her to come back. Then it kind of cuts to the after the credits scene where they introduce that there is going to be a Tommy Oliver coming up in a sequel if we ever get it. And it just kind of leaves it vague as far as what's going to happen in the next one. But obviously the next one will still include Rita losing the Green Ranger power to Tommy, fighting another menace, eventually more to do with the Zeo Crystal, probably maybe an introduction of Lord Zed, even though they didn't say anything about that, but he pretty much showed up around the time the Zeo Crystals did, so it wouldn't surprise me if he shows up as being the main villain of the second one, although they'll probably stick with Rita, and her ultimately losing will be when she loses her power finally to Tommy and, is finally defeated, and that'll probably be when Lord Zed shows up for a possible third installment, but we'll see where it goes. They didn't really hint too much as far as the Lord Zed, but like I said, they did introduce the Zeo Crystal real early, so, one kind of goes with the other. So, getting back to things I didn't like about the movie again, morphing. Okay, there's one point, like I said, when Billy first learns how to morph, he does it completely by accident, and it happens in the middle of a training session. But in order for them to fully morph for the first time, they all have to stand on this platform around the morphing grid and call to the power to morph. And it's like, that's not how it's supposed to work. They have the morphers and the power coins specifically so that they can morph anytime, anywhere. Not once in this movie do they ever pull out a morpher and go, it's morphing time of any sort. Even though if you go through the toy aisle at Walmart, they sell morphers from the movie that don't exist. They weren't in the movie. They stood on these giant platforms and said, it's morphing time, and then they didn't even call out their animals, they just kind of morphed, and that was it. And they had to be on the platforms in order to morph. The only one that was able to do it without being there, again, was Billy, and it was completely by accident during a training session. So, again, you could probably use the power coins to morph in times of great emergency, but for the most part, in order to morph and call on the Zords, they had to be on these platforms. So, again, I didn't like that, because if you're out in the field and you're getting attacked by a monster, you can't run back to the damn command center to morph and then run back out to the battle. You have to be able to morph on the spot, which they tried to establish that you could do with Billy learning how to morph, but at the same time, by the end of the movie, instead of them just being out fighting Rita and be like, hey, we have to morph, and doing it, nope, they had to go back to the command center and step on this stupid fucking pedestal to do it. Alright, time to wrap this up, because I've been talking for over a half hour about this, and it sounds like I'm bashing the movie. And part of me is, there's parts of it, like I said, I just couldn't stand the way they changed some of the stuff, but at the same time, part of me still liked the movie. But then again, part of me liked the other movies as well. Part of me still likes the series from what little bit I still watch of it. Part of it is the nostalgia kick. And, like some friends of mine were saying shortly after the movie came out, it had nostalgia without having too much nostalgia. It's like some people wanted more nostalgia, other people said there was too much. Even my manager at work, him and his son went to see it because his son's right around my age, and he said he more or less went to see it for nostalgic purposes. And my manager, who was never really into it, said he thought he was going to hate it because it was going to be like a cash in on the name thing. And he said he actually ended up enjoying it because it wasn't that so much, and that you didn't have to know anything about the original series to go into the movie. You could kind of do a fresh start from this. So I can kind of understand his point as well. But at the same time, it could use a bit more of a nostalgic feel, in my opinion. It was there, but they changed way too much to try and appeal to a new audience who didn't know anything about Power Rangers. And to me, it just kind of drove down what could have been a decent film. But at the same time, if you like Power Rangers, you'll probably still enjoy it. Like I said, the couple friends of mine who were really into Power Rangers probably as much as I was, both said they enjoyed it, but there's a lot of nitpicking I can do about the little things, which I've done in this video for the past 33 minutes, which you'll probably see maybe 20 of. So what would I give this as far as a star rating? As much as I want to go higher, I'm going to give it a 3. I kind of want to give it a 3.5, but like I said, there's just too many glaring issues that I've named in this video for me to give it that high of a rating. But at the same time, I enjoyed the film enough not to knock it down to a 2 or a 2.5. The glaring issues, although they bothered me, didn't take away from that much of the movie to where I couldn't enjoy it. Like I said, the Billy character probably should have played the Zach character. They probably should have had someone else playing the Billy character. And like I said, the other actor who ended up playing Zach could have been better fit as a Skull or somebody like that. They did have a bully in the film who I think was supposed to be kind of a combination of Bulk and Skull. I don't think they ever really gave him a name. And he was just kind of like there to establish that the character was nodded at. but he really served no purpose other than he was picking on Billy when Jason stepped in, and then all of a sudden they were kind of friends. Even though, like, Jason wasn't really Billy's friend, he was kind of using Billy like, yeah, I stood up for you because I don't feel you should be picked on, but I'm not really your friend. But, oh, hey, you have a car? I could use a car. Hey, yeah, I'll help you out with this. And it's just like self-centered manipulation on Jason's part, and it's just, they make him a real shit heel, and it's not who Jason's character was. I mean, Jason was one of the leaders at the community center, taught a class in martial arts, all that stuff, and was a positive figure in the community. To make him a degenerate and all the other characters degenerates, I don't know, part of that just bugs me. So as much as I normally would have knocked that down to 2.5 because of that, at the same time, I was still able to enjoy the film. So as much as I want to knock it down, I can't. It's just a middle of the road film. I'm torn between it. I like it and I hate it at the same time. I can't express that any more clearly than I already have. So yeah, it gets a 3. It's the middle of the road. So that's it for this episode. Again, as always, thank you guys for watching. Thank you for listening to my 35-minute rant about everything wrong and not so right with Power Rangers. If you like the original Power Rangers series, go watch it. You're either going to like it like most of my friends did and I partially did, or you're going to hate it just like I've ranted about for the past 30 minutes. So again, as always, thank you guys for watching. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, share the video. The links are down in the description. Click the bell up here in the corner. Make sure you get notifications every time I post new content. And until next time, we'll see you after the credits.